Okay, so yes, we set up the journal in 2006. We came here, didn't we, to meet Masood and talked it through at great length. What we wanted to do was establish a journal looking at the areas of adaptation and translation studies. Both Katja and I have sort of mutual interest in those fields and different facets of that. So we had a long meeting with Masood, very keen to go ahead, but made it clear that this should be the title, which we should actually foreground adaptation more than translation.
I think at the time there wasn't anything on adaptation as an academic journal. There were 5 on translation studies, so that kind of tallies with what you were talking about, the idea of kind of getting the new areas up and running. So we decided that we would have the relationship between adaptation and translation would be embedded within the editorials every time and within our choice of articles to publish. Right. So that it wasn't such an issue not to have it in the title, really.
That's right. And also Masood asked us, are there other competing journals in the pipeline? We didn't realise that there is one, which actually started in 2008, so just after us. So we the first one. Interesting, we've got a good relationship with them.
We
quite
have,
often peer review for each other and things like that, or give advice to each other. So So we publish 3 issues a year, generally edited by us, but we have had 2 guest issues so far. And actually, now we're quite established, we've got a few lining up over the next few years. There's been some interest in people guest editing a special theme. But we'd only do one a year because they tend to be particularly focused. We want to make sure that for the people who subscribe, there's an area they're not particularly interested in. We sort of, if it's too niche for them or whatever. Yeah. So that's why we've kind of restricted to 1 a year. And apart from that, we try and have a very, very broad range as much as possible. Just want to say something about adaptation studies, just I suppose where we're coming from, and again this is our angle, where is the heart of our interest. Adaptation does cover formal adaptation, so going from fiction to theatre, page to stage kind of work, generic, crossing kind of genre between horror and comedy, translation, going from one language into another, one culture into another. And also creative aspects, and this is very, very important to us and always has been. It would be very easy, in fact, the other adaptation journal is much more the academic traditional route. They don't really stray into the creative aspects at all. That's something we're kind of interested in. But so overall, it's an umbrella of theory, historical analysis, practical analysis. There's a whole range of things there. So it's a very broad field, and I think that was a selling point for us with Intellect, wasn't it? That actually this could encompass a lot, and yet not become just a cultural studies thing or something like that. There were clear processes within that which each article would reflect and echo and resonate. So we do include traditional essays, absolutely put those in quotes, whatever that may mean. So there tend to be 4 or 5 of those per issue. So people looking at particular things, adaptations of Shakespeare or anti-Minghella films or whatever the things we've covered.
Tons of Brontes, we're bored of the Brontes now. Lots of heritage. There was a time and there was nothing but those essays coming through.
That's right.
But those, the traditional essays.
A few things on Twilight and the last couple of years, So we have those. But then the section we're particularly proud of is the practitioner's perspective section, which it can encompass a number of things. It can be an interview with a famous scriptwriter, film director, or theatre maker. It can also be statements by artists themselves about their work, often with some great documentation, and as Sarah was saying about Intellect, their pride in images and colour, and we've had some wonderful documentation. Which have really done the creator proud, I think. And it can also include scripts. This recent issue is by far our biggest issue, 330 pages. We cleared this with Intellect because, it's a book length really, but we tend to have thinner issues, but they said it's fine, let us do one of these big ones. And what it was the full script of Lucy Gough's adaptation of Wuthering Heights that she did for Radio 4 in the Woman's Hour slot. For her, it's a fantastic opportunity because radio scripts are very rarely published these days. And Nick Hearn, who published her stage version, were absolutely fine as well, as long as it was all cleared in terms of copyright.
Yeah.
So we're particularly proud of this one. And Lucy Gough does a wonderful introduction to it, so from the point of view of a writer, a way into it. And so it's a very happy process.
Absolutely.
That was a good one to get done. So, it's not just scriptwriter work, it's other creative work. We've had pieces that are about installations,
Yeah.
briefly mentioned earlier, the DVD documentation, that issue. So there's a whole range of things there.
Yeah.
And also, we've also included within the practitioner's perspective of creative work, pedagogical reflection as well. That's been quite interesting, isn't it, looking at translation, adaptation in the classroom.
And that's, even though it's very much a separate section from the traditional essays, all that still goes through a peer review process. So even though we include creative work, the introduction that came with the script went to peer review. So there is still that kind of insurance of quality and acknowledgement really of it. It kind of helps the establishment of that kind of writing as part of what the Academy does. If you then have a body of peer reviewers who you've asked to review this, so it's kind of a give and take. It doesn't have any lesser status in the journal because it's gone through exactly the same quality insurance process as all the other stuff has. So there is no distinction between the essay and the prospectus in that sense, and they have the same weight academically as well as within the journal. So that's why it's very important that we don't just put them in because we like them, but that they do go through the same peer review process as the other material as well.
And I don't think that dilutes it in any way, does it? I mean, there's one issue, Mike Schneider with his Night of the Living Dead animation film. He used the soundtrack of the Romero film and did 100 different animators doing the components of it. Great, because we published about 24 images, which reflected it. And I mean, he was coming up with some really bold, wonderful statements, this kind of guerrilla approach to adaptation. But of course, that's retained, and that'd be very different in an academic piece.
Yeah.
But it absolutely went through peer review, and that was revised and revised until we had his artistic statement correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other section, of course, is reviews, and we have several in each issue. We do get sent a lot of books, which we distribute to various reviewers. So we have a separate reviews editor. She used to be a PhD student of mine. She's now got her doctorate, but she's carrying on. She really enjoys the process and getting all these books.
I know, at the beginning that was probably one of the most immediate and most exciting things about her starting the journal, is that suddenly all these books arrived on my desk. It's like, oh, look at them. And then it was like, oh no, when I spent reviews for this, what am I going to do? There's enough work to get on with. So the reviews editor, to have somebody looking after that. There are pitfalls in that too, and you have to be very sure of the kind of people that you want to work with and the team you're working with and stuff. But I think we're doing all right now.
But anyway, reviews, I mean, it's actually sometimes a very exciting part of it.
It is, yeah.
We feel it's quite nice to have that forum, and sometimes good debates can spark up where you have, one major name and analysing another major name's book or whatever, and there's sometimes interest is sparked off from a review section. Right, so talk about the peer review process. I mean, our policies are 2 minimum. Sometimes it is more than that. So it's particularly complex pieces we might and then so somebody would submit a piece and then we send it out to review. And we really do look for expertise. It sounds an obvious thing to say, but we really do try and ensure that the reviewers we're getting have some expertise, and it may be a question of being complimentary. I mean, it's a bit like finding examiners for a PhD or something, isn't it? Saying, well, are both there, or all areas covered? Are we satisfied that they're covered with the people we're approaching for this? So that, I think that's fair to say, isn't it? Yeah. And it is a delicate process. I mean, that's one thing, peer reviewers, they don't get paid, they don't get public credit for it. They might put it on their CV that they've reviewed for Journal of Adaptation, Film and Thoughts, whatever, but that's as much as they get. So it is a delicate process. It's academic goodwill to do it, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes reviewers are very excited, because that really is at the cutting edge. It's not even been published yet, but the chance to see something that's really in their field of interest. But it's,
Yes, it is, and you at the it takes a while to also build up a relationship with the peer reviewers. There are certain trusted people that we keep going back to, and we build, and it's nice, and we've met them now in person sometimes, and this, that, and the other. And there are certain topics where you go, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to find two people? And 5 have turned you down. They're too busy doing this, that, and the other. But it's by now I find it the most exciting part of it, because that's my immediate community now. I know all these because I know them. The authors don't. So the peer reviewers don't know who the authors are. The authors don't know who the peer reviewers are, but I know them all. And not that I would ever, spin it. But it's been a really good way of getting our names around and getting the journal established. And all of a sudden you kind of meet people at a conference, and I think I know your name because you've peer reviewed for me, and it's just a nice community building again.
It's very international.
It is very international. So I think we've had people from every continent, pretty much doing it. But it's also important to have the 2 minimum, to have at least 2, because they can be very, very different. There have been a number of times when we've had rejections and except with minor corrections come together, and then it's up to us to find a way through that. But it's really, really important to have the 2, to not just rely on 1, but to do 2 and 3 if necessary.
Some journals do just have 1. I just think that's a real problem. It's a real risk, actually, because we do find it a way. More often than not, actually, peer reviewers see eye to eye. They've ticked the same box. But as you say, sometimes it is extremes, and we have to navigate that. Okay, so this is the peer review form. I'm happy to distribute this. I don't know if this is standard anyway, Sarah, is it, or not? Do each journals have their own version?
Yeah, we've got a kind of template one.
That's right. I mean, this is one we borrowed from the Journal of Musical Theatre, which I think started the year before us. And we still use it, actually. It's a bit of the cover-all, isn't it? So. Anyway, so it's just all the spiel about, this is explaining to the referees what needs to be done and the importance of it. But it does give guidance as well, which is hopefully useful for the referees. It's useful for us coming back to sort of see, have they looked at this as well.
Did you have very low quality submissions at the beginning of the journal when it started off? Because that's what we're finding now with medical studies.
At the beginning,
People are thinking, oh, I can write something about heavy metal. And we've had
they want 5 articles to get their first issue out. Let's try. Yeah, we did. So the qualities got better every year, progressively better.
We have also sometimes, because obviously we check everything that comes in, and sometimes we haven't put it to peer review if there's a particular issue like intelligibility or relevance. Sometimes we've had to write back to them saying, thanks for submitting, but this doesn't seem to be about the scope of the journal, really. By all means, if you want to submit something else, or but generally we do send things out to peer review, don't we?
But at the beginning it was a mixed quality issue.
So when you're saying about non-native English speakers and you edit there, do you really use a unified tone, or?
No, we try not to unify it. We try to let their voice come through, but it's basically, sometimes it's just grammar issues, syntax, incomplete sentences, that kind of basic stuff. But we try very hard not to turn every article into the same voice in the journal because it gets published in that journal. But it's every article is there in its own right, and we respect the voice of the author. But sometimes you can't. some of the contributions sometimes are hard to look beyond the grammar issues.
Because there's concerns about ambiguity then, and other things start from there, don't they?
But
we've always managed
always,
it. I mean,
we
there's some
somehow
really good
managed it.
stuff, isn't there? Yeah. So it's a bit more of a referee form, so just the data received, data returned. Now this is an issue, and we'll come back to this later. But again, because this all depends on goodwill, you know, we do say to the reviewers, ideally, you know, within 2 months or whatever. But I mean, there's some of the review for where it's automated and they're getting nagged, you know, in terms of it's due next week, it's due tomorrow, whatever. And we haven't got a system like that. There's advantages to that because it keeps things moving, but sometimes it can be. You know, some people turn it around over a weekend, which is phenomenal, but sometimes you do have to keep asking, saying, look, you did agree to do it.
Mainly, it's delayed from the reviewers coming back. So the data received and data returned is quite important, if only to try and keep things moving. Because the last thing you want is, on top of your ordinary emails, on top of your students emailing you, on top of everything else that you have to do, the author sending you an email every other week saying, what happened to I've submitted this, what's going on, where is it in the process? Because that will stop you from actually getting it through the process. So being quite efficient, being efficient with this saves a lot of hassle.
That's right, yeah. We have discussed with Intellect about possibilities of an automated system, which would have advantages in some ways for us, because that means the machine will be coordinating it. But I'm sure there's disadvantages as well. I think they did, Sarah's gone now, but I think they did trial it, and some people hated it.
Can be a put off for the reviewer because you have to go through something.
Well, the ones I've done, they feel like being pestered.
And the personal touch is nice, and that kind of goes with Intellect too. You know, but to have that personal relationship with your reviewers, it means it's more than just an administrative process, and you can actually gain from it too.
That's right.
And it's a quid pro quo then. It's nice.
So here's these are the recommendation choices. So accept with minor changes as an article. These are changes. Request a major revision to be resubmitted for a future round of review. So what will happen with that? We will sometimes go back to the original peer reviewers with the resubmission. Not always. Sometimes we're able to look at what the first reports were and look at the resubmission and make a decision ourselves on if they've addressed the issues. That's what's very helpful, things to really mapped out. Suggest a publication or rejection regarding the articles. So those are the 4. So the best option is there's always minor changes. There's always something. In there, but we know that. So the student work, the doctoral work, whatever. Okay, and then also the comments on that, so an overview, and then changes and suggestions. So there's 2 sections there. So one is overall comments, and one specific bit which are extremely useful for anyone having to rewrite their piece. Okay. So just was outlining some of the challenges. The timeline delays, where is my essay at? We've already discussed this, so people saying, I've put it in, I haven't heard anything, or I've revised it, I'm waiting to hear, is it good enough now or not?
Do you, when you receive them, you send them out straight away?
We try.
Doing our best to, we received one yesterday, and I contacted one possible peer reviewer immediately, who I think is absolutely right for the particular topic it is. This morning on the train, we're beginning to discuss who else should we ask, hoping this first one will say yes.
The essay comes in and it will take us a week or so to find 2 reviewers, and then we'll send it out straight away. If it gets me personally, if I leave it, that's when I forget. And if it's not on that first page of my emails anymore, but I have to scroll down, that's in the danger zone. So it's quite important to do it straight away.
What I tend to do is whenever something comes in with a journal would sort of red flag it or whatever. So, you know, so
Richard is a bit better, a lot better than I am, I would say.
But what we do then is send out the title, the abstract, possible peer reviews. And, I'd say most, it tends to be quite good actually.
Most is
But
that.
there are
Within
some
2
who
weeks
ignore
of
us
submission, there would
completely
be,
or
there would
send
go,
it too
yeah.
busy, but yeah.
But also people are pleased, you know, it's nice to be asked to be peer reviewed. It's kind of, so we haven't had anybody yet who said, go away, but it's a compliment as well to be asked to be a peer
Especially as we
reviewer.
ensure the relevance.
Yeah.
And that helps,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it does, absolutely.
Nobody ever said, why have you asked me? They
No.
always can tell why we've asked them.
And a few times then they say, well, I can't do it, but I know these 3 people who may be really good to have a look at that. So that's also then quite helpful.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was one of the most important academic activities, actually, peer review,
Yes.
because it's a form of gatekeeping of knowledge and knowledge
Yeah.
production. So it's the thing that determines
Yeah.
standards and whatever it is that gets out
Yeah.
there. So
And it's also for your own position. Once that when you've been asked for the first time, you think, that's it. I've arrived. There's something. I'm part of the. Yeah, absolutely. But it is exceptionally important.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one of this timeline delays. I mean, we are proud of the fact that, you know, we always have a minimum of 2 reviews, and
Yeah.
sometimes that, you know, there can be a discrepancy in the feedback time that they give. But the best. Also, copyrighted images. Now, this is something, I mean, Intellect, you've absolutely got your policy on that. You've already touched on it, Sarah. And when there have been issues, you know, things are covered. The importance of that signed form coming back in from each contributor. But it's such a complex field at the moment. We're feeling acutely in adaptation studies where people are trying to talk about film and want to include images of the latest movies or even classic movies.
Yeah.
And there's whole questions about copyright. The policy is we tend to get the contributor to sort that out. So sometimes they have paid the BBC to include images. You know, we haven't got money to do that.
No.
So it's up to them. If it's that important, they really want the image. I know a lot of you are more image-based journals, perhaps, but in our area, with some pieces, it's a luxury. With some, it is integrally important.
Yeah.
But Intellect are great for advice on things. You've been really helpful about the status of screen grabs and things like that, and really help clarify things for us.
Yeah.
Is there clarity on that?
Not really, but there are. I don't. Well, I don't know.
We
there is.
allow screen grabs.
Yeah.
You do?
We've kind of taken the lead from some other university presses, but you know,
There are other
we think
universities.
it's fine.
But there's-
Not for covers.
No.
And there's no
It
question of
No.
size there as well.
Not so much size, but we would, if someone had an article and they had 20 screen grabs, we'd say this is
It's a bit-
perhaps, too much, but,
You basically you treat it as if it were a quote from a text. So you can only quote a certain percentage of a text before it becomes an issue of copyright. So for academic publishing, I think because that's what certainly other publishers I've dealt with in other ways, is as long as it's no more than so many and it's quoted and referenced, it works. It's academic publishing. It's as if it were a quote.
And not Disney.
And no, not Disney. No, they said no. You don't do Disney.
I think really important though to ensure the contributor understands about this, because we've had some who send in images and say, "You sure about that?" "Oh yes, this is fine."
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Not. No.
So we need to.
Just Disney.
We've got to make sure we're on top of that.
The other issue is one of quality of images,
Yeah.
which is really important. So it,
How do you make sure you're on top of that one?
Well, just to make sure they've sorted out the permissions, if that counts.
You actually get, you all sign things.
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we won't publish until, if there are permission issues, if permissions need to be gotten, we won't publish until we see the signed permission.
Like with the Living Dead animation, I mean, he sorted that out with the 20 animators. He was using images and they were delighted, but we needed that permission from them, that approval.
Yeah.
The kind of hubris aspect, where contributors are writing back, sending back, saying, well, peer review said something which I'm ignoring, and I take issue with that. And this is a delicacy of the process here, that you have to respect the academic judgment of the peer reviewer. And that sometimes that can hurt, and there may be fundamental differences, but that's the way it goes, and that's out of our hands actually as well, as editors. We have to respect the peer reviewers' judgments.
What do you do if you get radically different reviews? If you get two, one
then,
accept.
well, we then both read the article again and read the reviews again, and we decide whether we will allow the author to rewrite and find a middle ground, or whether we side with one or the other.
Right.
And that is then our editorial decision. If there are very different, it's us at first, and then together with the author trying to steer through that. It doesn't happen very often, but the few times it does happen, that's really when your role as an editor comes in.
How do you square it? I mean, say you overrule rejection or overrule an acceptance. How do you square it with the reviewer then? Because that's delicate.
It is delicate, but we wouldn't publish something that's been accepted by one, rejected by the other, without major rewriting of the article. So there is some work that has to be done to deal with the concerns that the person who's rejecting has. So we never not take that into account. So there is always some going towards.
We did have one, didn't we, last year, I think, which was about Shakespeare and films. We had two experts, and I think it was the Shakespeare expert who thought it should be a rejection. But actually, it was very positive from the other one. And then what we got them to do was just rework on the Shakespeare studies side of it and improve that, get that up to an acceptable level.
That went back to the Shakespeare experts.
I think we talked it through with him. I think we explained to him that actually we've got a situation where the film expert loves this piece. Which maybe it comes with the territory of adaptation, because you do end up stepping on toes of established subjects sometimes. So you get the English literature people who are very specific about the way they see adaptation, and you get the film people who are very different, or the performance people who look at very different things. It becomes kind of part of the conversation of the field, within the field, really.
Well, no, just like to say that the editor's decision is always, final.
Absolutely.
And editors should feel free to take that kind of, and to feel that they have the authority to do that,
Okay, another sort of challenge is this sort of shield of anonymity. We touched on it earlier, but the sort of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde syndrome, where people can say really vicious things because they know they're anonymous. It's bizarre at times, isn't it? The most nice, genial academics, sometimes, really personal things. And it's not because it's all anonymous. They don't know who's written the piece, and it's not about that. It's more deeply psychological than that.
Something about certain academics, where they do turn
vitriolic, and so sometimes we've had to temper that because we just think this is outrageous, really. Okay, it's a rejection, but we don't need to.
We don't need to.
Would you exclude reviewers when they start? Because I've done that before with reviewers. When I've known that they've said something and it actually was a student, trying very hard for the first time. And I wrote back to the reviewer and said, look, you don't know who you're writing about or who to, and it's just polite, it's good manners to be sensitive. And then they weren't willing to do that, so I said, sorry, you're out. I'm not using them.
We don't use them again. If they're really nasty, we don't tend to go back to them.
What's another challenge, actually, the role of board members, and this is something I think we'd hold up our hands and say we don't really use them enough. So sometimes we've had situations where they said, read the latest issue, thanks to the latest issue, read this piece. I was amazed I wasn't approached because actually this is really in my area, and so we have had that, haven't we?
Approach to peer review.
Yes. We do try and get the board member, because it's a nice prestige thing for them, and so we do try and ask them when we can.
The board actually, at the beginning of the journal, right at the beginning, was of much more importance than it is. Well, it's still important, but we're not so reliant on the board anymore to do the peer reviews and this, that and the other. But at the beginning, setting up the board was absolutely crucial in getting your first subscriptions for university libraries, because when people are on the board, they're going to get their library to subscribe to it. To have 10, 15 people who will peer review those first issues. And to have them start talking about it and get excited about the journal. So it was, now we can offer it as a carrot to people who've been particularly nice that they can be on the board because it's relatively established. But at the beginning, it was really important for us. And we have some, and certain people are on there because of those reasons, because we knew that there would be important in establishing this at the beginning. Not because we thought they were particularly necessarily nice and helpful, but now, so it's the board plays different roles at different times in the life of the journal, I think.
We have changed. I mean, there's times we've been a bit ruthless. I mean, we have had some people go because they were too busy to peer review for us. You're a board member, this is your area.
That's right.
But we have had that, sorry, you're not going to get your free journal.
There's so many times we ask a board member to review, and when they say no, many a times.
Could I quickly ask, sorry?
Yeah.
Recently I was in a similar meeting where there was an international scholar who was saying, if I see the name of a well-known board member, then I will be impressed. I will want to kind of get in touch with that journal. But then everybody else there was saying, board members are nothing. Everybody knows, they're just there as a name and nobody cares. And this is a well-known fact. And then the international scholar she just couldn't believe that they were saying that. I just kind of wanted your views on that.
Maybe a bit of both. You need to have a mix. There's certain people you want. For adaptation, everybody in that journal references Linda Hutchin. Linda Hutchin is on our board. That was a big thing for us to get her to agree, because she published the book on adaptation just the year before the journal came out, and to have her endorse it was really important. So yes, it did play a role that she was on there, that she's a famous name in the field. But then there are people on there who nobody's ever heard of, really. But they're really.
Yeah. No, what I meant was that everyone was saying board members don't get contacted. It's not that, it doesn't matter if they're names or not, but they don't really have a link to the journal.
Oh no, they do.
They're just there for show. Was literally what everyone said.
Not with us, no.
We could, I think we talk about we could do all of them, but we certainly do. We are in touch. I think there's a spectrum, isn't there? Because I've heard of some journals where they have meetings of the editorial board, and we've never done that. I mean, we had a big conference where half of them were there, and so we informally did. But we've never done that. But we're not the other extreme where it's just a show.
What's the structure? Have you got one board, or have you got the two board structure?
One board. One.
Do the international members feed articles through, or feed potential people who might be contributors through?
They certainly suggest to certain people, but nobody then submits and says, I've been told to submit by so and so. But we find it out through conversation with the board members. So they are important in getting people to be to know about your journal and to start working.
A couple have published with us, and they put
Yeah.
themselves into the peer review process themselves
Yeah.
anonymously. So that's all quite
Fun.
Yeah. Okay. I think just a couple of words of key advice. Keep in close contact with co-editors and the rest of the editorial team. With us, it's Katya and I. We've got journal assistant Marta and the reviews editor Liz. So it's the four of us, and Liz gets on with the reviews, but then we'll, before each issue, we'll touch base with us and we'll see what's going on there. But it's really important, I think, just to be aware. It doesn't mean constantly meeting, or we haven't actually seen each other for several years.
But it is important, and we worked at the same institution when we first started this journal, and then 6 months later I go to a different job. And it's only 45 minutes or 50 minutes, but it's quite hard. You have to be conscious of making sure that you do keep in touch and that all emails are CC to each other and you don't do anything. Yes, you kind of, at some point I do a bit more and then Richard does a lot more and so those kind, but you keep each other informed and you don't make big decisions on your own. It's much easier done over a cake and a coffee than over email, and it means you are then really a team and it's our journal. It's not Richard's issue and my issue. So we don't take it in turns, but it's...
Even though we do take, we sort of divide up the editorials.
Yes, we do.
I think email's more business-like, you know, it's sort of a more bullet point, isn't it? When we meet, also we talk about the future of the journal and things we're excited by and things we think are really great getting. The other thing is we absolutely, as you said, CCing every email, even the most banal thing is just so important. We've both got a record of that. We also set up a Hotmail account for the journal. So that's by default, we copy into that as well. So that's like our archive of everything, the most trivial things. But there's times it's useful to be able to look that up, you know.
So you CC everything to that account?
Yes.
Because certainly when my Bristol has just moved from Mulberry to Google Mail, but when we run Mulberry every week, so you're over your quota, you need to delete everything, and then and our Hotmail account never does that.
No,
so it's kind of an easy filing system more than anything else, because it's the two of us, we both have access to it, we can both deposit things, but it is, if you know a better way of filing stuff away and keeping it accessible to your editors, go for it. But for us, that really works.
That's right. And Intellect was right to the 3 emails, don't they? So
yes.
That's great. Okay. The other thing, also keeping close contact with Intellect, the journals manager. In our case, is Jess Mitchell. I suppose that's not her term, is it, journals manager? That's you, Sarah, is it? Or
well, she's your journal.
She's our journal manager. Small J, small J. And Jess has been absolutely fantastic with us. So
yes, she has.
Dealing with any kind of issue, really. You know, if we're in doubt, we'll drop her, and she tends to get back immediately, just with advice
really
guidance or whatever what needs to happen. So. And someone at Intellect will know. I think that's the important thing with some of these issues to do with when things are out, or images, or quality, or format, those kinds of things. They'll instantly have the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, yes, when it comes to images, for example, we kind of keep saying it's got to be at least so the resolution of blah blah blah, and they still don't send it to us, and then just rest. And it happened. Magic. So there have been times when Jess also gets in touch with authors, to do certain things where we have been going on and on and on, and it's a very different thing when it then comes from the publisher. But so that relationship has been really crucial in making it work well.
Yeah, the thing is, it's just one thing's great with Jess is also, we've had a couple of symposia and she's come along to attend those, and that we really appreciate that. I think it's just Intellect's genuine interest in the journal, the life of the journal, and affiliated activities, and also us as our academic work, and that's been really great as well.
Absolutely.
And that's led to really good discussions on it. Okay, I think that's everything. Yeah.
That's it. But any more questions? Fire away.
So there's submissions happen on a rolling basis.
Yeah.
There's two questions. Special issues, or do you theme issues? Do you put a call out? Specific.
Right at the beginning of the journal, we put a call out. I think we put 2 calls out in the entire life of the journal, and that was at the beginning, and then we didn't have to anymore. And with the themed issues, the guest editors approach us with the package.
Right, so they're inviting contributors at that point.
So
the guest editors, presumably, they're currently a package, so they're inviting contributors who then put through the peer review process.
Yes.
That's worth mentioning, actually. I mean, it's very important to adhere to our process. Sometimes we have guest editors come and say, well, we're going to do this. Hang on. You've got to go through the peer review process
and make use
and
of...
keep us copied in to everything that's all the reports and all that.
And we're a bit more savvy now that, because of that issue with one board member being unhappy about what happened in the guest edited issue, that we make a point now as well. If you guest edit, please have a look at our board in the first instance for possible peer reviewers, and then your second one can come from anywhere. But have it so that it's a little bit more, following the process.
Give us the copies as well, just to.
So outside the guest editors, are you inviting contributors who then, I mean, for example, with your theme in the issue, if you have
we don't theme one when we edit it.
We haven't had. We talked about it.
We have.
Actually, this is another issue. We publish about 15 pieces a year, don't we?
Yeah.
3 issues, 5 or 6, 15 to 18 pieces. We have got a bit of a queue waiting to be published. We've had a mad time with the ref, where
absolutely.
the UK contributors are saying, please, or in one case saying, can you publish me after? So,
can I
sorry, no, because you've been scheduled for this one.
but then because we're now in the very luxurious position where we have more articles ready than we need for the next issue, we do sometimes think, that will go nice with that, and should we make sure we have a radio piece, a film piece, and a theatre piece in there, make sure that there's the breadth of the topic in each issue rather than concentrations.
Yeah, that's what.
But that's just our decision. You can do that however your area.
When you're getting peer reviews for kind of the non-traditional articles, do you give the peer reviewers different guidelines or different advice, or do you just give them the same?
No, we tell them it's for the practitioner's perspective, but apart from that, they get the same form. We choose them wisely. We don't choose somebody who thinks academic writing should be only one thing. We do choose the peer reviewers, and we know that the ones we choose from the practitioner's perspective will be positively inclined to that sort of output. It means they're very rigorous because they don't want practice as research to be tainted by bad practitioners' perspectives, if you know what I mean, because it is a thing that needs to be established still in the academy. But they don't dislike the idea of it.
No. And sometimes, one thing worth saying actually, contributors more often not really appreciate what happens with peer review.
Yes, absolutely.
Where they're getting suggestions, and some of the practitioners think one particular one, a whole new area where she could apply that to her practice. It was really grateful that she'd been introduced to that.
Because we've only told you the negative. Most of the time it's a very happy process and it's very constructive feedback that the people get. And when do you get that? When do you, it's really nice to get that attention. And that level of constructive criticism to develop your work further. So most of the time it is a very happy